My wife Linda and I were with 4 other couples for a much-needed evening of dinner and dancing for all of us. It had been a long winter, and we were more than ready to say goodbye to it. Linda and I had reserved a room at a neighboring hotel, while our 2 children spent the night at a babysitter's house. It was going to be a very good evening. At least I thought so. "Hey, isn't that Mark Lavaliere?" Phil, one of our friends, asked, looking behind me to see. It's him! He's coming toward us!" Dee, Dave's wife, shrieked with excitement. Mark Lavaliere was the star of our town's soccer team. Unlike many others on the team, he lived here year-round. He had a reputation as a genuinely nice guy, and was well known for both his community service and his exploits on the field. Mark became the main topic of conversation around our table, with the guys talking about his soccer exploits and the women praising his good deeds and good-naturedness. Everyone watched in admiration as he approached our table. Upon reaching it, he began to walk around it. He looked like a man on a mission of some sort. "Hi, I'm Mark. Would you like to dance?" He stood behind Linda's left shoulder, holding out his hand to her. I felt Linda gasp. She threw my hand away as if it were a hot potato. I watched numbly as she turned her back to me, reached out to Mark with her right hand, which almost disappeared into his big paw, and rose gracefully from the chair. "Hey, man, now my feelings are hurt? I thought she was only dancing with you tonight," Dave smiled, teasing me. "Yeah, I thought so too," I muttered. "Relax, Jim, it's just a dance," Jane tried to reassure me. I tried to believe her, but I couldn't shake the bad feeling I had about it. The musicians played a couple quick songs, and our entire table watched them dance. So did everyone else in the room. Mark was good, much better than I was, and Linda was clearly pleased. Her partner and her dress came together to show off her flawlessness. "Don't they look great together? Come on, Jim, let's join them," Dee invited me, clearly trying to distract me. "Thanks, but no thanks." The next song was slow. I watched Linda melt into his arms, fitting perfectly into him as if she belonged to him. He was good at it too. Lots of practice, I bet. Sour, thought I to myself. Mark said something to Linda. She smiled sweetly as she replied. He wasn't doing anything I could legitimately object to. He danced no closer to her than I danced to Dee or Jane. His hands were nowhere near her, somewhere they shouldn't be. Another slow song, a ballad this time. I could see the leader of the musical group watching my wife and her partner, taking cues from them. Mark was smiling as he held Linda in his arms. He was clearly pleased with what was happening. I'd already seen enough of this. I rose from my chair and felt Jane's hand on my arm. "Wait, Jim. Give her this. Don't ruin it." I pulled my hand out and looked at Linda's face. She clearly wanted to be exactly where she was and nowhere else. She didn't want me to interfere. I leaned back in my chair. Finally, the song ended. Mark nodded to the band leader, who started a faster song. He and Linda left the dance floor, smiling but not touching each other, not even holding hands. Linda smiled radiantly at him one last time as she turned, walking to our table, and Mark went to his own. There is little difference between a woman's best smile and her second-best smile. Unless you know a woman well, you probably won't notice it at all. As Linda approached our table and our gazes met, her best smile was replaced by her second-best smile. That's when I realized we had a problem. "I keep telling you that you're the most attractive woman here," I whispered in her ear as I sat her down at the table. I took her hand and held it with both of my hands. "Isn't it time for the next dance in our number?" For the tiniest moment, I could have sworn Linda was scared. Her eyes widened, and I felt her hand tremble. She caught the moment quickly, however, and turned away from me, looking across the table. "Sorry, everyone. I just need to go to the bathroom right now. Linda, will you come with me?" Dee's voice could be heard far away, across our table and beyond. I was too busy wondering why she had to broadcast it to the whole room. Linda looked at me guiltily. "I'm sorry, Jim. I need to freshen up a bit, too." She got up and left without answering my question. Of course, the conversation immediately turned to why no woman who goes out with company can go to the bathroom alone. I was just beginning to wonder why my friends were working so hard to keep the conversation on that topic when Dee returned. Alone. "Where's Linda? Is she okay?" I was practically yelling. Relax, Jim, Dee said, smiling. Linda's fine, she just has some things to do. You don't have to worry about her. She's a grown woman, you know. All my friends started teasing me about worrying about Linda. It's true. I did. She was worried about me the same way. I put up with it for about 5 minutes, and when Linda still hadn't come back, I'd had enough. I got up and headed for the bar, taking my empty plate with me as an excuse. I approached one of the barmaids. Excuse me, but my wife went to the restroom about 15 minutes ago and never came out of there. She never spends that much time in there. Could you go or send someone over to make sure she's okay? The bartender looked at me incredulously. The plate in my hand gave me an idea. The wings are great. She likes spicy food, but she does have that reaction from time to time. Really, I just want to know she's okay. Her name is Linda. Here, let me show you a picture of her. I set my plate down and pulled up Linda's picture on my phone screen. The bartender started to show sympathy when a voice was heard next to me. She's fine. You don't need to check anything, Dee addressed the bartender. It's okay. I'll take care of it. She placed a 5 on the counter. I wondered why the bartender looked at me sympathetically, putting the tip in my pocket. What? Why? But she went in there with you because you asked her to. I was completely confused. Jim, she's not in the bathroom. She left the club. She left? Without me? Why? What's the matter? Why didn't she tell me? Where did she go? Is she okay? I still don't get it. Yeah, let's go to the end of the bar where there's some privacy. I just went where Dee dragged me. It was quieter in the dark corner at the end of the bar. Dee looked me in the eye. Jim, Linda loves you. She loves you and the kids more than anything in the world, and she always will, and you know it. But tonight, she's spending the night with Mark. I stood there with my mouth open looking stupid, my whole world over. Pictures were spinning madly in my head, or rather, what was left of them. Linda in her beautiful blue dress at the top of the stairs. Linda at dinner. Linda at the club. Linda as we fed each other wings. Linda in asshole's arms. My anger was building. So, on our special night, she'd left me for some asshole? I looked angrily at Dee as I growled those words. Jim, she didn't dump you. She's coming to your house tomorrow and you'll have many more special evenings together. She didn't even have the guts to tell me to my face that she was leaving me. She just slipped out the back door. Jim, listen to me. She didn't dump you. Well, if she didn't leave me, where the hell is she? She's certainly not with me right now, is she? I was getting loud and I didn't care who could hear me. Please calm down. People are looking at you. Look, I know you're hurting, but it's just today. Linda knows. We all know you're the only man for her, and you always will be. You're a good guy. Yeah, and we all know where a good guy ends up, don't we? Jim, that's not true. You're making too much of this. It's just for tonight. She'll come back to you tomorrow and everything will be the way it was before. I snorted at her. If she really believed that shit, anything I could say wouldn't matter anyway. So, girlfriend, what was your role in all of this? You didn't have to go to the bathroom, did you? My wife gave you the signal, right? She told you to stall me and interfere with me long enough for her and Mudak to escape? Yes, she asked me to do that because she didn't want to embarrass you. You'd make a scene while Mark was here. She also asked me to make sure you remembered that she loved you and she would always come home to you. Yes, I will definitely remember how much she loved me tonight. I will remember it for a long time. More like she didn't want me to be the one to embarrass her when she left her husband to spend the night with an asshole athlete. I don't suppose it occurred to you, girlfriend, to remind her that she had a husband and a marriage and she could lose them? Dee looked me in the eye. No, it didn't, because I know she won't lose you over this. You're too good a man to let that happen. I told her how lucky she was that the man every woman in the club wanted chose her. But she's even luckier to have a husband who loves her enough to get over her resentments and not do something stupid. You know she'll be willing to do whatever it takes, and as long as it takes to make up for the wrong she's done. What if there's no way to fix it? What if there's no way to fix it? Jim, I know how much you love Linda and how much she loves you. It shouldn't make a big difference. It's just one night, a one-time experience. Compared to all your years and all your love, It doesn't matter much if you don't give it to her. I know she'll come home to you, and I know you'll be okay in time." Dee spoke softly but confidently. All I could do was not grab that stupid woman and shake her until her teeth grit because she was spewing such nonsense. She must be living in some alternate universe if she really thinks that. "So if Mudak had picked you like you wanted, would you have done the same thing?" "Yes, I would." She threw her answer back in my face. "Does Dave know about this?" "No, and he doesn't need to know because I don't think it will ever happen," she said quietly. "Maybe I should tell him, 'Jim, please don't do that. Don't even think about it. I know you're hurting, but it won't help. Please go back to the table. Let us all take our minds off it for a while. You know, you danced with me once all night." She smiled invitingly at me. "I wanted to dance with my wife. But thanks to you, her and Mudak, that's not an option now, is it?" I turned my back on Dee and walked back to our table. When I emerged, the conversation at the table abruptly broke off. Averted eyes told the whole story. All of our friends now knew that my wife and Mudak were making a cuckold out of me at this very moment. Jim, are you going to be okay?" Dave asked hesitantly, sitting Dee down. I wanted to tell him what Dee had said and ask him if he was going to be okay, but I couldn't force those words out of my throat. I guess I haven't stopped being a good guy yet. I've got to work on that. "It depends on what you mean by good." A few nervous chuckles rang out. "I mean, yeah, it sucked, but you two aren't going to do it, are you? You're not going to divorce Linda over this, are you?" "I don't see why I shouldn't," I replied coldly. Everyone at the table caught their breath. "Why are you all so surprised?" I continued. "We all know how we feel about deceit. Once it's over, it's over. We made that rule a long time ago." "But Jim, that's Mark Lavaliere." Dee stepped in. "So what? I don't care who has it. If it ain't me, it's over." "Jim, what about your kids? We all know how much you love them and how much they need you. Think about them before you do anything." Jane's kids were about the same age as ours and were best friends. "You make it sound like my wife is thinking about them right now? Well, that's why you have a nanny, so you don't have to think about your kids. I think Dee wanted it to be funny. It was too cheesy." "Come on, Jim. It's just one night. It's an opportunity she'll never have again. You're not divorcing Linda for one night." "Why not?" I looked at her. An awkward silence followed. "Jim, try thinking about it this way. Maybe it will help." Jane tried to sympathize. "What if the Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover model was here tonight? Let's say she picked you out of all the men here to dance with you and then offered to spend the night with you. Can you honestly say you wouldn't be tempted by that? Can you honestly say that you would refuse such an offer?" The pleading expression in Jane's warm brown eyes made her look like a particularly cute puppy, and it usually got her what she wanted. But not this evening. I stood up and looked at Jane. "Yes, I would be tempted, but I would turn her down. You see, I have a wife, and I don't want to hurt her. At least that's what I would have done before tonight." There was another deafening silence. I looked around the table, glaring at each of my former friends who were all on the side of my cheating wife. At that moment, I sincerely hoped to never see any of them again. I pulled out a 20 and tossed it on the table. "That's just for me. You all cover the whore I came with. You can pay her bill too." I turned around and walked out of the club. My anger cooled as I walked the block and a half to the hotel. It was replaced by the deepest sadness I'd ever known. Linda and I were supposed to make this walk together, holding hands, chatting with our friends about what they were going to do when they reached their rooms, and in turn, annoying us. She was supposed to hold my hand and tuck her face into the sleeve of my coat when the conversation got into too risky territory. Instead, I was alone. Alone, I rode the elevator, trying not to think of the times Linda and I had taken elevators at other hotels. Alone, I entered what was supposed to be our room. Alone, I faced the wreckage of our special night. I turned on the light and closed the door behind me. Suddenly, I felt very tired. I threw my winter coat on the floor and headed for the bedroom. There were Godiva chocolates on every pillow. In the middle of the bed lay a bra and panties I hadn't seen before. They were a deep blue color, darker than her dress, trimmed with black lace. In my imagination, I could see her parading around in them with that combination of love and sensuality in her eyes that she had felt for me, which had been all mine until tonight. I gently took the lace in my hands, as if by holding it, I could bring her back to me. It didn't work. I cried. My wife, my sweetheart, my best friend, had been taken from me by another man. He grabbed her carelessly, easily, right in front of me, as if he had every right to do so. He didn't care what she meant to me. All he saw in her was a beautiful one-night-stand sex toy, and she let him. I didn't matter enough to her to try to put up even the slightest bit of resistance. It was as if she, too, thought he had a right to her, stronger than the right I had earned over nearly a decade as a faithful and loving husband. Yes, it was only supposed to be for one night, and the next morning, I suppose. So, what would he leave that night in her heart, mind, and feelings? What could I do to compare, let alone compete, with the hero of the town, handsome stud Mark Asshole Lavaliere? Thinking about what we planned to do in that room, I realized I couldn't sleep there. At home, in our bed? No, that would be even worse. In another hotel. That was stupid. I'd already bought a hotel room, maybe in one of the kids' rooms. That could work. I repacked Linda's suitcase and my own, ate both chocolates, useless to throw them away, but tossed the soaked bra and panties into the wastebasket. They were empty and useless without Linda, just like our special night. I was sitting in the living room when Linda finally made it to our house shortly after noon. She was trying her best to act like nothing had happened. I had to appreciate her acting skills. I just hoped mine was as good. Jim? Jim, I'm home. She sounded like she always did when she got home from work. She closed the front door and turned on the light. I turned to look at her. Was the night and morning with Mark everything you expected? I asked in a hopefully neutral tone. Everything and more. When she looked directly at me, there was sympathy and determination in her gaze. This was the best sex of my life. I knew it was going to be amazing, I admitted. I bet his tool is pretty big, isn't it? I have to say, you're taking it a lot better than I thought you would, Linda replied, smiling. He's a big guy, so I'd say his other assets were in proportion. It took a little getting used to. I'm so glad we can talk about this. It's going to spice up our lovemaking. It will be even better, Linda predicted optimistically. The night was too amazing not to share information about it. I showered and cleaned myself up really well before Mark brought me home. I was worried you'd be upset, and having him by my side wouldn't have helped, from the word go at all. I think you had better get cleaned up, I answered honestly. Wasn't he worried about sex with a married woman and how your husband would react? Not really. In fact, he seemed turned on by the fact that I was married. He told me that a married woman was better and I was one of the sweetest he'd ever had. I know he said that just to compliment me, Linda admitted, but my motor really started up when he whispered that to me. All this talk is turning me on. Why don't we go upstairs? Does he like married women? You think he was trying to turn you on? Does he turn on a lot of married women? I asked. Did he say he was trying to impregnate you? No, Linda exclaimed. He never talked about getting me pregnant. What kind of husband can think like you? And my opinion wasn't taken into consideration, I replied. If he gets you pregnant, at least we can get child support from him. I don't have to get pregnant, Linda insisted. I'm still a couple days away from my fertile period. I don't want to have a baby with him. Why would you even suggest something like that? Don't roll up your panties into a tutu if you're wearing them, I retorted. You had unprotected sex with a soccer player producer. His swimmers can work wonders, even as we speak. Everyone in the family knew I'd had a vasectomy after the birth of our 2 children. Our family was complete, and we didn't want the stress of worrying about an unwanted pregnancy. Don't turn the best sex of my life into a negative. I'm not getting pregnant. Well, if you're so sure, I replied, obviously softening on the subject. Have you figured out how you're going to react when friends and family start asking you about your night of incredible sex? Will you tell them how great it was, how much you enjoyed it all, and how proud you are that he chose you for the night? I see no reason to bring it up with other people. We'll just keep it between us, Linda replied naively. When Mark chose me, it was pretty quick. Were you surprised? I just stared at her for a few seconds. I was very surprised. Your plan is to just hope no one ever mentions your entertainment? Isn't that like hiding your head in the sand? The 8 people who had dinner with us know you ran away, and a few other visitors and club employees. Our friends won't tell anyone, Linda assured me. No one else knew I left with Mark, so I don't see any problems. You seem to have thought of everything, I replied, nodding in agreement. Can I ask why you left without telling me? You must have known I would worry. I knew you would never agree to it and would try to stop me. I'm sorry I didn't trust you to make my decision. Most husbands would have made an unpleasant scene right now, Linda reasoned. I appreciate your understanding. Let me be clear. Did you really think I would get upset and try to stop you from being with a soccer star? I wish you'd stop calling it fun. It sounds vulgar and cheap. In answer to your question, I really thought you'd be upset. If your wife leaves the restaurant to make love to another man, it can be a little awkward, she concluded. Are you saying you were going to humiliate me in front of our friends? I asked thoughtfully. No, I didn't mean to humiliate you. It's just that a lot of husbands will see it that way. A man's ego is such a fragile thing. I realized that you love me without reservations and we can solve any problem. My night with Mark might create a little bit of a roadblock. And I think I was right. Let's go upstairs and make love. It's time you got your wife back. I need to mow the lawn. I was supposed to do it this morning, but I got distracted, I replied, and Linda's smile suddenly disappeared. Did you get some kind of health certificate or something from your lover? We can't have sex until we know you're clean. There are some very nasty diseases, and let's not forget HIV. That's if you think about it, not to mention any documentation he might have had. He could have contracted something after being tested. I hear he's a real man whore, I stated, putting emphasis on the word whore. He's a professional athlete, Linda protested. He has to get tested all the time. He's a very neat and clean guy. You don't have to worry about Mark passing me anything. You're right. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about that, but you do. I Googled it this morning, I added. It can take up to 6 months after infection to develop antibodies to HIV. You'll need to be tested for STDs and HIV now, and then tested again for HIV in 6 months. Are you serious? Linda demanded an answer. You know damn well Mark didn't give me HIV. You're just being petty. Yeah, I probably won't blow my brains out playing Russian roulette, but I'm not going to play it anyway, I replied patiently. 6 months will go by fast before you realize it, unless you're going to sleep with him again. It'll change the schedule a bit. It was just one time, Linda exclaimed. I'm your wife. From now on, I won't have sex with anyone but you. I want to be your loving wife as long as we are both alive. You and the kids mean everything to me. There will be no second time with Mark. Yeah, I almost forgot how much we meant to you last night when you were in Mark Laval's bed. Thanks for reminding me. Linda must have noticed the sarcasm in my reply. You really don't like that I spent the night with Mark? You just pretended to be happy for me to find out what I was doing with him. I expected more from a man who claims to love me. If you mean me, you'll never make the mistake of judging my character correctly. The good news is that you certainly weren't disappointed last night, I parried. Linda seemed to experience an epiphany. She looked worried. Jim, I never meant to hurt you or embarrass you. I love you. We can get through this. Let's never discuss this again. We can work to get back to where we were before yesterday if we try. You're the only man for me. Why should I believe that when you very publicly told me to go fuck myself as soon as some stud told you he wanted to fuck you? How do I know it won't happen again? I demanded an answer. What if he calls you in a week and tells you he wants more? What then? I'll tell him that my husband is the only man who gets a piece of my married ass, Linda replied hotly. I've been hit on several times over the years, and I could always say no to a guy like that. I just stared at her until she broke eye contact and looked down at her feet and her face turned red. I need to mow the lawn, I said, heading for the garage. Mowing a big yard is good because it gives you time to think. I did just that, spending a couple hours cutting the grass and trimming the edges. When I finished and went inside to get a drink, the house was quiet. I looked for Linda and found her asleep on the couch. I assumed she hadn't gotten a good night's rest the night before. I washed my face and walked into the small room where we have a desktop computer. I turned it on and logged into Facebook. The first thing I saw was a message from a friend from work. I don't normally use Messenger, but I clicked on the icon. "Jim, you should check out Jane Freeman's page. It's about you and Linda. I hope it's all bullshit," was the entire message. With a sense of dread, I typed Jane's name into a search and found her immediately, and went to her home page. It only took me a few seconds to find the message my friend was referring to. Jane incoherently described her evening at the posh Chez Pierre restaurant and the surprising turn of events. She never once mentioned Linda or Marc Lavaliere by name, but that was just about the only thing she left out in her account of that evening. It seems that one of her friends was approached by a famous soccer star during dinner and asked to dance. After a few dances, she apologized and went to the ladies' room and never returned. It didn't take long for her friend's husband to look for her until another friend of his wife's explained that she had left with the famous athlete. I thought I could dodge the bullet aimed at my heart because after reading the post twice, I saw that no names were mentioned. Then I read a few responses. A woman whose name was unfamiliar to me commented that she had seen Linda Bennett dancing with Marc Lavaliere for a few dances. A little later, she noticed Linda's husband standing alone at his table. Linda was nowhere to be seen, nor was the famous Marc Lavaliere. That was all it took. Dozens of comments about Linda, Mark, and me, or any combination of them, were immediately posted. I reviewed the comments and concluded that most of them identified me as a wimp and a cuckold. Linda was a girl of easy behavior. Mark, for his part, was handsome and a lucky bastard. That's it. That's the answer to Linda being able to trust her friends. I was disappointed, but not surprised in any way. People love to talk, and Linda gave her so-called friends a great excuse to do so. Oddly enough, the words they called Linda bothered me more than my new nicknames. It was a little easier, though by no means pleasant, to be considered a wuss and a cuckold than when my wife, the mother of my children, was called a whore, a slut, a slut, a slut, a slut, a slut, and sometimes all three epithets at once. I worked in marketing for a large company and knew a lot of tricks for showing shit the right way, but this was beyond anything I had ever encountered. How could I protect my wife and kids? Hell, what should I try to do? Linda had fucked not only the soccer player, but our entire marriage. He was floundering in the shit. My boss at work always preached that we needed to think outside the box. I sat at the keyboard for half an hour before an idea began to form. It wasn't so much a solution as it was a direction for the conversation. Linda and I would suffer greatly, but why not? Somehow Linda had decided it was okay to sleep with a complete stranger, albeit a famous one. Somehow I had given her the impression that I would forgive her for it. Was she right? Could she shit on me, humiliate me in such a horrible manner, and then be forgiven? At that moment, it seemed unlikely. I decided to risk everything. Linda wouldn't hesitate to screw the slick bastard and humiliate me, seriously jeopardizing our marriage. Why was I being so timid? Hell, I was already pretty well shaken up. In a divorce, she'd get custody of the kids, child support, along with the house. I'd just get some more shit, but this time from a legal standpoint. And really, there was no reason to worry about anything anymore. My wife, her lawyer, and the legal system would have combined to be the perfect storm for me. I should view anything short of serious injury or death as a victory. I was already well shoehorned in, so I threw all caution aside. Basically, I had nothing to defend or fight for. Linda had publicly emasculated me. I'd been called God knows what, so why not run away? Let the chips and shit fall wherever they may. I opened my Facebook page and started composing. It took me half an hour to list everything I wanted to say, but I felt like I'd already laid it out pretty well by the time I hit the enter key. It was Sunday, and we always went to lunch at Linda's parents' house that day. When she walked into the bedroom, I was already in the shower and about to put on clean clothes. "Why didn't you wake me up? Now I have to hurry or we'll be late for dinner," Linda complained as she began to undress. "Since you spent most of last night having the best sex of your life, I thought you could use a break," I replied calmly. Who cares if we're late or not? Your mom loves you, so she'll forgive a small transgression of yours, like being a few minutes late for dinner. I know she'll forgive me, Linda objected. The problem is why we should make her cook dinner for us if we don't have to. It's just out of consideration. Are you trying to tell me you think you're considerate? I shouted at Linda. I'm trying to be. You're still upset about last night. You know, I couldn't tell you I was leaving with Mark. You would have made a scene and embarrassed yourself with me. So you just ran away, leaving me to deal with my humiliation and embarrassment. You think that was considerate? I practically roared. It would have been better if Mark had beaten you up if you had tried to stop me from leaving with him, is that it? It was tactful of me not to let you know my intentions. You'll get over it soon enough. It was just sex. You're the man I love. That's why I didn't want you to get hurt. Linda explained what I thought was strange logic. Interesting, was my calm reply. You think you saved me from pain when you got into his bed? So that was the sacrifice you made for me. I feel so much better now. It wasn't a sacrifice, and we both know it. It was something I had to do, and you trying to stop me would have ruined this magical moment. I'll never see him again, but I'll always have beautiful memories. It was a beautiful night, Linda concluded. I didn't talk to Linda on the way to her parents' house. We picked up Emma and Tommy from the babysitter. When we entered Linda's parents' house, we were greeted with absolute silence. Mom, is something wrong? Have you been crying? Linda asked worriedly, hurrying over to her mother. Is Dad okay? I don't think so, her mom replied. I didn't expect you here tonight. I thought you were probably going out with your boyfriend again. My boyfriend? What are you talking about? Demanded an answer from a suddenly angry Linda. Did Jim talk to you about last night? He didn't have to say anything. My friend, Brenda, has told me quite often about another friend's Facebook page where you were mentioned. It's all about you leaving Jim and spending the night with some basketball player, Linda's mom said, before finally breaking down. I don't know what anyone said or wrote, but I never broke up with Jim, Linda stated. We're still happily married, aren't we, Jim? That may be a slight exaggeration, I admitted as Linda fixed her gaze on me. And I'd like to make it clear that this was a soccer player, not a basketball player, and Linda was exceptionally happy this morning. By this time, our two kids knew something was wrong. Grandma was crying, and Mom was looking at Dad with an angry look. As soon as Linda's gaze left me and saw the sadness on our children's faces, she went into Mom mode. We're going to pick up the kids and go home, Mom. I will call you during the week. Don't believe everything you hear or read on Facebook. Jim and I are happily married, and I certainly don't have any other boyfriends. Let's go, you kids. The drive home was cold. Linda spent the entire time reassuring the kids that their parents were happy and everything was going well. By the time we got home, both Tommy and Emma seemed more relaxed. As she heated up the leftovers, the kids ate and finally went to bed, Linda decided we needed to talk. She had always believed that the best defense was a good offense. Why did you tell Mom you weren't happy in our marriage? That only made her more anxious. What the hell did she read on Facebook? Who said I had a boyfriend? I think she probably read Jane's Facebook page. Several posts used the term sex buddy, not boyfriend. Your mom was just being polite. Jane posted about Mark and I making love. She would never do that, Linda protested. Technically, it was a post about Mark beating the crap out of you. The word love was never mentioned there. I turned my phone off last night and forgot to turn it back on, Linda realized. I need to check my messages. I knew shit was about to hit the fan, so I found something to do in the kitchen when Linda turned on her cell phone. For the next few minutes, I could hear Linda moaning, cursing, and sobbing as she read her messages. After about 10 minutes, she slowly walked into the kitchen. Her eyes were red and puffy, and her nose was streaming. She looked as miserable as she had ever looked before. I was surprised that Jane had written about me leaving with Mark. I thought my friends had more respect for me. But what really hurts is the crap you posted on your page. How could you humiliate me like that? Do you realize how much that hurts? Actually, I do. You did the same thing to me about 24 hours ago. It wasn't intentional, Linda objected. It was just your ego. I never meant to embarrass you. That's why I slipped away without making a scene. I'm sorry if my posts embarrassed or humiliated you. That was certainly not my intention. I was just caught up in the moment. You are the woman I love and want to spend my life with, I replied, but without sincerity. How can you write that it's great to have a wife who's been screwed by Marc Lavaliere himself and not demean me and yourself for that matter? Linda demanded. The cat was already out of the bag, so I felt I needed to get ahead of the story. I didn't want to look like a husband whose wife completely disrespects him and humiliates him in public. I decided to play the willing cuckold rather than the betrayed husband. Cuckolds stay married, and devoted husbands dump the cheating bitch wife as soon as possible, I explained. Are you out of your mind? You made me look like a whore. Why would you think that? I asked. How does that make you look like a whore? You're shitting on me, aren't you? Linda asked angrily. Doing all those things is just the definition of a slut, asshole. I'm a little confused. If these actions define a slut and you've done them all, doesn't it follow that you should be considered a slut, especially since you did them all to a man you literally just met? What's the problem, really? You really are a little man, Linda growled. Just leave me alone. You can sleep on the couch. As soon as the words were out of her mouth, I dashed for the stairs. I jumped 2 steps at a time and rushed to our bedroom. By the time Linda got there, I was lying in bed with my eyes closed. I said you should sleep on the couch, Linda said firmly. Go to hell, you whore. This is my bed, and I'm going to sleep here. I'm not going to sleep on the couch, and don't call me a whore, Linda insisted, as I squinted to make sure she didn't have a gun. I have to admit that I used to be much more concerned about your desires before Marc Lavaliere devastated the hell out of you, I stated calmly. I'm staying in my bed. You can sleep wherever you want, just like you did last night. Linda snorted, sobbed, and sobbed her way to sleep. I didn't get much sleep last night, so I fell into a deep sleep while she relived her misery. The next night was not much better. Linda was in a quiet rage when I walked in the door after work. Everyone at my work was asking about my weekend. A few people even asked about Marc. One woman wanted to know how big his buddy was. I hope you're happy. Happy? Hell yeah, I'm happy. When I came into work today, there was a melon-shaped soccer ball on my desk. When I came back from lunch, there was a Lavaliere jersey on my desk. Bob Jefferson, the asshole, advised me to buy a cuckoo clock. You have your problems and I have mine, so leave me alone, I replied angrily. So you're starting to see the consequences of your actions? Linda replied with a chuckle. Maybe you should think a little before you post nonsense on Facebook. I humbly submit that this would not be a topic of discussion if you could hold your feet together. We are dealing with the consequences of you being a cheating wife, not my attempt to blog about it. I walked into our living room and played with the kids until dinner was ready. The kids chatted during the meal, but Linda and I didn't talk to each other. We only tried to talk to the kids. Linda put the kids to bed shortly after we finished dinner. I heard her go into the bedroom and slam the door as the kids fell asleep. I finished cleaning up the kitchen before logging into my Facebook account. 15 minutes later, Linda came down the stairs. You wrote that I needed to get tested for STDs and HIV. You're ruining my life. Do you have any idea how embarrassed I am? My own mother agreed it was a good idea. Why are you being so childish, selfish, and self-destructive? Let's look at the situation. We went out to a nice dinner with friends. A famous athlete told you he was willing to sleep with you if you could sneak away from your husband, which you did. Meanwhile, I was thrown under the bus, left with my bag and completely shoehorned in, figuratively speaking, of course. 8 people we were friends with knew that you left me to have fun. Explain to me how that wasn't childish, selfish, and, as is now quite obvious, self-destructive. I was just trying to have a good time, one affair in a monogamous relationship in a lifetime, Linda insisted. You wrote and posted that crap to hurt me. I wasn't trying to hurt you. You say that all the time. Maybe you believe it, but it's bullshit and crap, I replied, mulling over Linda's words. You knew I would be humiliated. You admitted it when you told me that you were surprised at how well I tolerated your late-night sex. You expected me to be very upset, but you made the choice anyway. You claim I intentionally hurt you, but the pain you caused me was just collateral damage. Now you think I shouldn't do anything that hurts you just because. I just realized I have no idea why you think I would consider your feelings. I'm your wife! You're supposed to protect me, take care of me. What you're doing is hurting me, Linda whimpered. Do you expect me to fulfill my manly duties after you've given up your womanly duties? Do you have the nerve to try to take your place on the throne? I angrily demanded. It may not seem like it, but I'm doing this for us. It's the only chance we have of staying together. Are you out of your mind? You make me hate you. How can your cruel words and actions make me want to stay with you for even one night? Instead of answering, I headed upstairs to go to bed. I wanted to make sure she couldn't lock me in the bedroom. I wasn't in the mood for symbolic gestures. The next evening after work was less stressful. I made an appointment with our doctor today to get some blood work done. That seems to be the one thing everyone who makes a comment on your page agrees on. I realize now that I should have made Mark wear a condom. Realizing she still didn't understand anything, I silently went and changed my clothes. I spent a few minutes on Facebook before I was called to dinner. I was washing dishes when Linda walked into the kitchen. You want me to take a pregnancy test? I told you I was probably safe. I'm sure you are, Linda said firmly. Publishing that comment was petty and mean-spirited. You really are an ass. As you might expect, the environment at my work was horrible. When a man shows weakness to other men, they approach him like a pack of wolves. I was a constant target of jokes and nasty comments. It was a real test of my discipline and determination to endure the entire workday, and it seemed to get worse every day. The next evening, when I walked in the door, Linda was already waiting for me. I managed to get a doctor's appointment this morning. I had all the tests done, including a pregnancy test, even though I'm pretty sure I'm not pregnant. It was pretty embarrassing. The doctor and his staff all knew why I needed these tests. They never said anything to my face, but I could hear the giggles and chuckles in the hallway. It will take a few days to get the results. I have a favor to ask of you. If Mark really did infect me or get me pregnant, could you please not publish this? He's really not a bad guy, and it would be embarrassing for both of us. I looked at her like she had two heads before turning around and walking away. She was still claiming the bastard was a good guy. Nice guys don't sleep with married women. It's called fucking breaking vows. When the kids were done eating, I pulled out some chopsticks with absorbent cotton on the ends and told the kids to open their mouths. As I was swabbing, Linda suddenly realized what I was doing. Jim, they're yours. You don't need to check them. I read that damn Harry's proposal. He was never your friend before this problem came up. Don't listen to him now, Linda pleaded. It's very important for me to make sure they're mine, I replied icily. The children looked and acted so much like me that I had no doubt about their paternity, but I still didn't think Linda understood that. She didn't accept the seriousness of her actions. She denied it, blaming me for the storm of shit that followed. But she never admitted that she had made a bad decision and never thought badly of her soccer player. Friday was a particularly bad day at work. The guys were trying to set up for the weekend by putting pressure on me. I did feel that some of them were tired of the way I was being treated, but they were in the minority. It's getting harder and harder to do my job, Linda admitted, as she put the kids to bed and returned to the kitchen. The men keep suggesting that I slip away with them. What makes them think I have time for them? At least Mark is famous, rich, and good-looking, but he was a mistake. I can see that now. Could you just give me a hug tonight? I don't expect you to want anything more than that, especially before my test results come back, but we've been fighting all week and I'm tired of it. We never went crazy in bed, at least not before I went to bed with this jerk. I miss my husband. I held Linda until she fell asleep that night. It wasn't easy for me. Every time I thought about touching her breasts or thighs, I saw Mark fucking Lavalier playing with her breasts. All I could do was not strangle her while she slept. It was a relatively quiet weekend. I did a few things around the house, played with the kids, and caught up on lost sleep. Linda was doing about the same. I was devastated to see Linda and felt no desire to touch her or hug her. I knew I still loved her, but her disrespect for me was too much. Monday at work was much the same, but I tightened up my defenses and didn't let it bother me much. Bullying requires a victim who reacts in a certain way, and I refused to be that victim. The pleasure of riding my ass was dwindling just as I had anticipated. That evening, just after dinner, there was a knock on the door. Linda was putting the kids to bed, so I was alone when I opened the door. A man in a suit with a briefcase stood waiting for me to invite him in. I nodded, showing him to follow me into the kitchen. "Mr. Bennett? I'm William Morris. I represent Helping Hands, a local charity that helps disadvantaged children pay for school supplies." "You represent?" I was surprised. "You sound more like a lawyer than a representative. Okay? An advocate rather than a representative?" That was very funny when I first heard that about 30 years ago. "I'm a lawyer. I am here to offer you a substantial fee to stop your negative references to Marc Lavaliere in print, on the internet, or anywhere else." "So then, you want to give me money to stop mentioning what an asshole your asshole client is? Does all the negative publicity have such an impact on your fundraising?" I asked, not even trying to hide a smirk. "That and the letters you've sent to our sponsors, clients, and directors," the attorney admitted. "You have hindered our efforts more than I can say. I'm here to offer you $10,000 to stop this and refrain from further action. Does that interest you?" "A little," was my reply. "Your fucking client used his fame, wealth, and beauty to seduce my wife, thus making our lives a living hell. Linda has been the best wife, lover, and friend a man could ever have. She is a great mother, a loyal friend, and a respected member of society. Your client intentionally lured her into his bed with no real interest in her or concern for her feelings, her family, or her position in society. I felt like the happiest person in the world every day we were together until your client, that fucking snake, slipped into our garden. $10,000 won't get me out of this shit. I'd rather have my wife's loyalty than any amount of money, but this asshole has already fucked it up. Go back to that motherfucker and tell him I'll never mention him again. Plus, I won't mention his name for the child's birth certificate and for getting him child support for the next 21 years or so if I get $1 million in my account by next weekend." "That's nonsense," the attorney immediately replied. "I'm only authorized to get to 25,000. "Well then screw you and the horse you came on," I said with a snarl. "My wife's virtue was priceless, and your offer is just an insult. Now that's $2 million, and I'm going to need it by the end of the week, or you're going to read about how I'm going to raise Lavaliere's son to play for the fucking Patriots. Now get the hell out of here. I don't want to see you again if you don't have money in your hands." I led the muttering man out the door and slammed it shut. Linda came toward me as I turned around. "I heard the whole thing. I really screwed up, didn't I? I had the best husband a woman could ever want, and I pissed him off because of my fantasy. It wasn't a night of incredible sex. I just tried to tell myself it was. I had made a huge mistake, but I couldn't admit it even to myself. I'd rather have my life back with you than be with that asshole. I'm sorry, Jim. I was wrong to disrespect you and embarrass you. I just pray you don't divorce me, but I won't blame you if you do." "That was a long time ago," I said to Linda as I opened the refrigerator and pulled out a beer. "I won't make any promises about not divorcing you. You definitely deserve it. Let's see how I feel in a week or two." Thursday, I got a call from Morris. "Mr. Bennett, my client is a charity. Can we, as members of that community, ask you to waive your extravagant request? Think of the children we can't help if we give in to your demands." "I look like I came in with a fucking pile of pumpkins?" I yelled into the phone. "I Googled you motherfuckers. As far as I can tell, your help only reaches a few kids. Over 90% of your budget goes to expenses like huge salaries, vacations, meetings, and promotions. If you want me to release this vile bastard, wire me $2 million before the banks close tomorrow. If you contact me again for any reason other than receiving instructions to transfer funds, the price will go up another $1 million. Philanthropists, my ass." Friday afternoon, I received a call from Morris informing me that the money had been transferred. I immediately logged into my account and saw the $2 million deposit. That shitty sandwich Lavaliere served me tasted a little better. When I got home, Linda was making dinner and the kids were playing in the living room. "We're putting the house on the market tomorrow," I announced. I don't want to live here anymore. Where am I going to go? A very depressed, Linda asked. What about the children? Are you taking them away from me? I was thinking of a warmer place. Maybe Hawaii or Florida, I replied with a smile. The kids will come with us. What about our jobs? There won't be much money from the sale of the house. How will we live, pay rent, and buy food? Linda asked. It's not that I don't want to leave here, but we have to be practical. We're going to make a fresh start. We have enough money to last us until we get a new job and find a good house. Lavaliere managed to soothe my ruffled feathers for the sum of $2 million. If you ever pull a stunt like that again, you'll be pecking shit with the chickens, I warned. We got lucky this time, but I'm still mad at you. Every piece of ass that gets ripped off of you belongs to me. It can't be sold, borrowed, rented, or bought. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Linda replied. I guess my news doesn't compare to yours. My tests came back. I'm clean, not pregnant, and horny as hell. Can you find it in your heart to want to sleep with me out of charity? You're being offered a $2 million piece of ass for nothing. Don't kid yourself, I replied. That's for 10 huge chunks of ass. My marketing and negotiating skills have brought us a lot of money. You have to realize that I'm going to be miserable to live with for a while. It will take time to get over your betrayal. If I ever have any inkling that you're cheating on me, I'll find a nuclear bomb and detonate it. Don't worry, Jim. I've learned my lesson. It was a hard lesson, but I've always heard that hard lessons are the best lessons. I just want to love you and be loved by you. I'm ready to start over. It's going to be an adventure. Will you miss your friends if we move 1,000 miles away or more? I asked. My friends? They tricked me, Linda snorted. At the moment, you're the only friend I have. Now that I think about it, you're really the only real friend I've ever had or needed. I only have one request. Please don't ever come back to Facebook.